Well, good evening, members of the Board of Education and their central office and audience members. It is our pleasure to be here tonight with you, and thank you for the tour about a week and a half ago of Calkins Road and coming around. I also want to say thank you to Stephanie Warchel, who's here, who is our art department chair, for the artwork that's around the building that is pretty impressive around the room. The Xbox controller over there seems to be the future of my household, so it's ringing true to me. So we wanted to kind of go over a little bit about what's been going on since we last saw you in June, when we were here, or at least in the auditorium, and talk about our social emotional programming, what's happening, and what's coming. So we do want to, well, and there you go. Want to start off talking a little bit about our CAP. Using the new CAP process in the district, our ILT started our work over the summer and continued into the fall, working and rehashing what are our major issues that we want to support and push forward. And it really came down to two pieces. One, in the grading practices, which is the work that's been going on in the district for a number of years, and talking about our practices and our philosophy, and continuing to support that learning as needed, and try to bring things to the whole faculty or to the small groups and departments. And a big part of our CAP, kind of the two-prong, was also our social emotional piece, which is our focus of today's presentation. So some of the highlights since we saw you in June, we have been continuing our work around the professional learning communities. The secondary schools this year did coordinate several faculty meetings throughout the year to try to allow our teachers that are in maybe some singleton departments or smaller departments to be able to coordinate to work vertically with our feeder school, or the school that we feed into, or horizontally with our colleagues at Barker Road, and that's been nice. We spent the big part of Superintendent's Conference Day focused on this work, along with our grading practices and also establishing group goals. Mike's going to talk later about the creation of our Calkins Road Diversity and Inclusivity Committee, which has started up over the summer. He's leading great work on that. He's also going to talk about more of our touchstone work with teams. Some really good things going with our students and our teams around our touchstone that Mike's committee has been leading. Some exciting things that went on this fall. We had the Midnight Weekend, our second annual Midnight Weekend, coordinated with Homecoming. So four Calkins Road sports teams all had home games at the same time, and we have enough fields. So we had boys and girls soccer, we had swimming, and we had volleyball, all at the same time with a food truck. So we brought in the crowd, and it was our second annual event to benefit the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation of Rochester. We raised almost $1,000 this year, so something that we look to continue to grow. Next year, we're looking to coordinate it again with Homecoming district-wide, and maybe make those games Calkins-Barker, because that's always a good crowd too. You know, of course, in the spirit of collaboration between the schools. I can't be up here without mentioning the outstanding arts program we have. Lion King Jr. was our 6th grade musical this year, and kudos to Nancy Wayman, our communications office. We've actually been on the News 8 honor roll twice in the last few weeks for our Letters with Meals on Wheels campaign, as well as our talent show, which is always a good hit as a fundraiser for the program. And of course, this morning we were visited by a few members of the Jewish Federation Foundation's educator experience, and Ziva Babin, Ziva Babin, principal of the Emmett School in Modin, Israel, spent the morning with us and just going through classrooms and meeting students and seeing all the things that we have over at Calkins Road. She was absolutely amazing and engaging with the students and with our faculty. She has a new best friend in Betsy Park. Those two are going to be working together. They're going to be staying together and working together all week. And it really is something that they met last night, and it seems like they've known each other for years. And so what we're hoping to do is take that energy and that enthusiasm and that partnership and really grow and expand it. We have a lot of teachers already in our building expressing interest in trying to be part of something bigger with a sister school over in Modine. So it's very exciting today. So it's very exciting. I do want to talk about, or kind of lead into the pieces that Mike is going to expand on. And really at the core of a lot of our work is our mission statement. Something that we did a lot of work on last year, using both the district's mission, vision, and core values in our work, the National Schools to Watch essential elements, and really bringing that into, okay, what do we do here at Calkins Road as we look at our academic programs, our extracurricular programs, our social emotional programs. It really is a centerpiece. And the other centerpiece I want Mike to speak to in more detail, as he was just integral in its development.
Thanks, Josh. Good evening. It's funny, I'm reminded of, I was hired in Messina, New York as a social studies teacher right out of college. And I went up there, it's about a 6-hour drive, and fresh out of college and looking for some sage wisdom from the man I'd be replacing. This guy's packing his room, and I'm kind of picking his brain, asking about Regents exams and test scores and a lot of other things. But the one thing I'll never forget is when he said, "Remember, Mike, you're not teaching history, you're teaching kids." And that has always stuck with me, and I think that's a big reason why when we talk about our touchstone and SCL and the Midnight Way, why I think we get excited about it, because we know at our core, this is so much about what we're trying to do in our schools. So the Midnight Way, again, we talked a little bit last year about how this poster, the shield, and kind of at the bottom, the creative, resilient, mindful, and spirited came to be as a way to kind of caucanize, if you will, what we're trying to do as a district. So how'd this all happen? Just a refresher, we wanted a slogan or a saying that could kind of roll off the tongue, if you will. And so we got feedback from teachers, students, and parents, and created creative, resilient, mindful, and spirited. And so the next thing you got to do is figure out how to brand it. And so at the end of last year, we did a few different things. One was had a T-shirt that the entire faculty, or a large majority of them, bought that said the Midnight Way always. And oftentimes you'll be seen wearing them on Wednesdays if you come into the building, or when we have events as a building. But the kids see that, and anywhere from the teachers to our folks working in the cafeteria, it's just a great consistent message. We introduced it to the kids during Spirit Week. We came out with some banners, and those now hang in our cafeteria. But again, just reminders to the kids, and continuing to look at how do we brand this in the building so that when teachers choose to talk to kids about it, the kids know what they're saying, know what they're talking about. So this year, what are we doing? We started the year when we talked about the code of conduct. Oftentimes I lead a discussion with teams about the expectations and that kind of things. This year we tried to integrate more of being creative, being resilient, integrity, fairness, all the words that are on the shield, and talk to them about what would you be willing to commit to doing, that if you said, I will, live my life with integrity, whatever it is that you think would make a difference in the building to yourself and to those around you. And the kids all brainstormed. Every kid wrote 5 I will statements. And eventually we're going to look to have some kids look at those and choose some statements to kind of, again, go around the building, whether they're on posters, whether we paint them on the walls, I'm not sure yet. I'm going to let the committee and the kids figure that one out. But just, again, ways to remind the kids of what we're trying to do and how to live with integrity, live a great life. The coat of arms is just a visual. We actually, in collaboration with Sutherland High School, the kids designed sort of little logos for each of the touchstone statements, sent it up to Sutherland High School, where the art students are now designing that into a graphic, an electronic graphic that can be then turned into patches, t-shirts, pins, whatever. And again, just using that as a visual example of the Midnight Way. Going a little bit deeper with that, though, now starting to get into, again, how is this going to impact daily what we're doing with kids? And we've really been doing a lot of experimenting with restorative practices, restorative justice. If you're not familiar with that, if you look in the DNC recently, there's a story about how Rochester City schools have been really embracing that concept and some of the positive results that have had. So again, we're kind of exploring some of that. An example of a peace circle would be, let's say a student made an insensitive comment. Rather than just saying, okay, you have detention, and the kid walking away from it not fully understanding why what they did was offensive, and then holding on to a resentment towards the other kid, and the cycle kind of continues. Restorative practice would suggest, let's talk through why what happened was offensive, and how do you make it right, and really listen to each other on that. So out of that often comes agreements that are collaboratively made. It could involve, and often does involve, the parents of both the kid who was targeted, the kid who was maybe perpetrated, whatever it was. And again, we think that's a little bit more educational than just, here's your punitive consequence. And that's not to say there's not room for traditional consequences. I think there are, and most of the time, I think they're highly appropriate. There are some situations, though, that require a different approach, and this is one way we're doing it. Another thing we noticed last year with our student body was just kids would often, in their own peer groups, so friends, among friends, would say things that, in my mind, and I think in the adult's mind, we'd say were maybe insensitive, maybe not, in the spirit of inclusivity. And the thought was, what do we do about this? How do we come up with an approach with our kids that will teach them why maybe these aren't the right things to do? So we said, let's get together a group of parents and teachers to really explore this topic, look into any kind of data we have related to it, and make recommendations. So we've met 3 times now as a committee of teachers and parents, and are exploring action steps for whether it be recommending training to the faculty, whether it be any kind of presentations to the kids, or a way of starting to talk about these things with our kids. These are the topics we're exploring actively with, again, the parents and the teachers. And it's been a great committee. Finally, language we use with the students, again, is finding ways to encourage teachers to continue to use the shield, the words on the shields as they talk to the kids, including me, when kids come down to the main office for things, mistakes they've made. Asking them to reflect on, what part of the shield here maybe could you have used? Some other ways SEL's involved in our building, some of the clubs we have, Best Buddies. Of course, we know we presented on them a lot last year, but the basketball game and some of the work they've done is incredible. We started a new club this year called Helping Hearts, which is totally student-led, based on the message of Sweethearts and Heroes. And it's kind of a combination of getting together and talking about issues they're facing, whether it be with bullying or peer pressure, and then also looking for ways to spread hope in the building. They went around and put little sticky notes in all the lockers one time. They're looking next month to go to help distribute toys with the Salvation Army. So just, again, different ways they can express spreading hope. Community Service Club, again, a lot of the volunteer hours that, I don't know if you know how many hours they've done, but just, again, the idea of helping others. So one of the things, the feedback we got from the teachers for how can we continue to promote SEL was continue to come up with some building-wide traditions. The one we have in the works for this year is a knighting ceremony. The idea of kids moving up to Sutherland High School, you're going to become knights. And so, again, a lot of how you build a culture in a building is, how do you welcome people into your school? How do you say goodbye? How do you, move on? And so looking at the idea of a guest speaker, hopefully maybe a student from Sutherland who could talk about how, doing the Midnight Way helped them in high school. And also welcoming them into the culture of the high school that's up there. The other thing is recognizing kids at all of our grade levels who have demonstrated the Midnight Way. It could be, on each team, maybe the most creative student or somebody who's exemplified that. Think of Pittsford Pride on a smaller scale in our school. But here's another way you teach kids about what are those values. Here are solid examples of kids who we're recognizing, because I think the words there they're open to a lot of different ways kids can show that. We're also looking to expand. We heard about the fall weekend there where we play Barker and raise money for cystic fibrosis, expanding on that to a full week in which we look for ways to give special attention to the touchstone words and just highlight that with the students. So that's the work the committee, the SEL committee, is looking at. Finally, one of the things we talked about was, again, recognizing students who are showing the Midnight Way kind of in the moment versus like waiting for the great kid cards or waiting till the end. So one idea, I'll give the PE department a shout out. They said, why don't we see if we can have some t-shirts made, and when we see a kid doing that, on the spot say, hey, that was really creative, here's a t-shirt. And then challenging each department to have their own way that they do that.
So with that, you see Mike's passion, and I really have to applaud Mike for his leadership with the social emotional learning committee in our school. I do want to say with the knighting ceremony, there will be no sword. So I saw a couple of heads go like that. So we wanted, like I said, I wanted to highlight some of the things that have been going on and some of the things that we're looking to bring and continue to build as part of that culture over at Calkins Road. So I thank you, and are there any questions or any comments?
Just curious, how does the restorative practices work alongside with our code of conduct, for example? If there was an action that may have invoked some disciplinary action, how do those two work side by side?
Well, they're not mutually exclusive. I think if we're to have an incident where there was a violation of the code of conduct, and I'm just going to give you kind of an example where there were unkind things said. Well, there was definitely a need for a response from the school, but in part of that response, and maybe that response is a more traditional discipline, but that still, as Mike said, it still doesn't help either side to move on. So I will say our counselors have been unbelievable with gathering, the students or the parents, Mike, myself, as part of that. So it's, in some cases, it's that in itself is what needs to happen in response to a situation where maybe there were students in conflict, but it hadn't escalated to a violation of the code of conduct. Sometimes it has. And so, we'll like I said, we'll go the traditional route, but maybe instead of, a longer term consequence, it's shorter term with that P circle as part of it too, because that's what really needs to happen, is the educational component.
I think one of the parts, Josh, that's really important is bringing how you bring the parents on board. Thinking about a young man who did something that certainly wasn't reflective of our character of a building, and with Dad in the room and brainstorming different possible solutions, the boy actually did a book study and did some outside work with the community that was relevant to what he did that wrong.
Right.
And then circling back with the boy and seeing quite a significant difference in his actions.
The situations where this has come up this year, the parents have been absolutely outstanding. And just really want to be part of they see the bigger picture and helping the kids to learn from both sides of an equation too.
I just wanted to say thank you for the tour. We had a great time. And please extend our gratitude to the entire staff and administration, both of you being there. But we also had the luxury of touring the makerspace in the library, which was so impressive. In fact, one board member, I won't mention names, said, I really wish I could go back to middle school. So, but
Okay.
it was amazing to see. So right. That was incredible. But thank you
You're
again.
welcome anytime. It is open. Just need a pass from a teacher.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.